thanks all for coming today. And today we're here to talk about virtual schooling for EAL learners, and we're with a specific focus on the journey so far in the British School of Guangzhou, which is in South China, quite close to Hong Kong. And I'm going to be talking from the perspective as the EAL coordinator at the school, but also as a Year 2 teacher. So I've been asked to put this webinar together because I'm with a bigger focus on best practice. So don't expect lots of citations and lots of backing up of what I'm putting forward here. It's just best practice. Although I hope that through this, you can see a lot of the strategies that are considered at the moment to be some of the current thinking of language acquisition. So please bear that in mind. It's more of a best practice sharing. It's sharing how we've done this so far. So yeah, a little housekeeping. Can I just ask everyone to make sure that your videos are off and that you've got your audio muted, and then we will have chances to for question and discussion later on. So a little introduction to myself. I've been in China for 12 years. I should probably start with my name, Samuel Ryan. I've been in China for 12 years. I've been teaching for 12 years, and 10 of those years have been at the British School of Guangzhou. So I'm adept to the China context. And I've been learning about language acquisition for a very long period of time now. And I'm sure that there's a huge amount of experience here today. So I'm hoping that we can have a great discussion among us about the points raised here, anything that you might agree with or disagree with or want to add and build on. So before I move on as well, the work in this is predominantly coming from Year 2. However, a lot of the strategies are widely appropriate for all our primary year groups, even into upper key stage 2 and key stage 3, because a lot of the strategies, as we know, for language learning are based on are good for all of our learners. So I hope that despite the fact that it's more of a Year 2 focus, I hope that what I share can be useful for anyone teaching in the primary phase. And I before we move on, I just want to say as well that there has been a huge amount of work put into the content I'm sharing here, and it's not just all me. It's very difficult to do a best practice without really acknowledging the hard work behind the scenes by so many brilliant teachers. So I think it's very important to ensure that everyone is mentioned when we move forward. So the aims of today's webinar is for our participants to share in what we've found have been crucial for EAL learners, but also for all learners in this very unique situation of virtual school learning. So I want to, like I said, to share the best practice and processes from homeroom primary classrooms, but we also have a look at how we plan with EAL departmental staff, how that differs on and offline, and have a look at the process we've been through since February, really, as a school. And again, before we move on, just please use the Zoom group chat to list any questions you might have or any concerns. And I can already see someone said they can't hear me. So if you can't hear me, please let me know. I'll do everything I can to try and make sure that does not continue to be an issue. Okay, so a little bit about our school and where we've come from and where we're going at the moment in the British School of Guangzhou. So when this period of online learning began, the biggest thing we found, the most important thing, was communication between everyone, especially parents. Parents have been really, really concerned about the whole situation and very worried about their children falling behind. So it's been really important to set aside time every day to have that key communication between our teacher teams, between the managers, between our learning leaders, year leaders, and of course parents. So um, it started off when we had to just react to this. It started off with packs of stuff, learning materials, which we were just putting out there for things to do because we didn't know how long this was going to go. And then we quickly realized that we were going to have to do more of this. And so we quickly moved towards video teaching for all content. Um, so we formed teams of people who would plan the English, who would plan the cross-curricular content, who would plan the maths. But we were all using a similar approach to our planning, and it's very similar to how we plan as a school as a whole. So we are now moving towards a blend of live content and video content. So we're doing Zoom lessons. I'd say this is predominantly towards what the parents want. This webinar is not going to cover so much content about live classes. However, if there's anyone out there today who feels that they would like to do a webinar on live teaching, I would absolutely love to attend, because that is the direction of this. Although I would like to put forward, I'm still not entirely sure if it is better than providing high quality video content, high quality learning content for home study. That's to be discussed. So that's the direction we've taken so far. So they've moving forward. We've kind of talked about our journey. So we're just looking at what I have realized as being very key for when planning for our EAL learners. And again, I say for all learners. So obviously the planning process and our EAL teaching it has been really important. Another area is how powerful feedback can be in your stretch tasks or in your support for your students. Another thing we're going to look at is that less is more. We always need to remember, and it's easy to maybe forget, that in this situation, children are at home without a teacher, and possibly, or most likely, to be without an adult that can speak English. So we need to make sure that our planning is entirely accessible for the students to do by themselves. Now, if you think about the tasks that you set as teachers in a face-to-face context, how does that differ to what you would expect a child to do independently? Speaking opportunities we're going to talk about. We're going to then look at explicit instruction and scaffolding. We're also going to look at shared rights and model text creation. We're also going to look at planning for language and access in maths, sharing some best practice from our school from a wonderful teacher called Miss Catherine. We're also going to have a look at enthusiasm and humor as a scaffold, which has actually been quite important. Parent communications and relationships. So these are just a few areas that we're going to look at today, and we're going to delve into these parts in more detail as we go. This is not, by any means, this is not an exhaustive list at all. You might have a lot more things that you've considered for your EAL learners to think about. Well, we think this is important. These are some of the areas that I've found are like absolutely essential for EAL learners. But at the end, I would like to hear from anyone who thinks I've missed anything, because I'm here to share best practice. I'm not here to as the voice of all EAL teaching. I'm just here as what I've found and what our team has gone through. So please share at the end. So we're going to start off by looking at the planning process, really, and how we plan offline our school, but then also how that needs to change in this current situation. So I'm going to share with you our kind of planning process This is an example from English, although a lot of it is transferable over to maths and cross-curricular, because of our high content of our high demographic of EAL learners. It is very important to go through a certain process. Now, this was developed in our school by Shane Leaning as well, who is actually in our chat right now. And I led training on this with the learning leaders. We call year leaders our learning leaders, and how we go about doing this. Now, this is an EAL support planning sequence. This really is for homeroom teachers and EAL support staff. So I'll go through it just quickly. So the long-term plan begins by reading the books, reading your key books. Everyone needs to do that, and you need to decide on books that are really appropriate for your learners, and your EAL teachers, your language specialists can feed into those conversations. You've got to be able to really know your students and know where does the most support need aiming. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but this is how we approach planning at BSG. Some of the most important things that we do are ensuring that week by week we have identified vocabulary, the skills involved, the language structures involved, and what scaffolding may be necessary for our children to access homeroom content. Now, I wanted to go through this because it's important to see a model and then how it might have changed for our online situation. Now, before I just go on, I just say plan SEALS classes. This term is, we'll look at this in a bit. It stands for Specialist EAL Support, and it is for that signals our EAL departmental lessons. We work on a push-in, pull-out model at BSG with a lot of co-teaching and also some pull-out lessons. So that's the kind of structure we go through for this. And the way we've moved towards now is for our virtual schooling planning model is quite similar. So we read the core texts, and then we establish what language structures, reading strategies, written outcomes are to be considered. We considered the taught content versus the applied content. So what is the actual teaching? What is the applied? We actively plan in speaking. We actively plan in reading out loud and drama activities. And there is also focused language and grammar practice on decided areas. And this is usually given as additional opportunities by the EAL teacher, SEALS teacher, in another set of lessons for the children, for those target children who need the extra support in language acquisition. And we are all, and then we look at model texts and shared rights. Now, this is a really important one, and I plan to go through this a little bit later on in more detail, because this looks a lot different on and offline. So, and then we try to give an end goal, even though we're not face to face. Whether the last unit of work we did for English had a rewrite of a core text with a change in setting, and you will get to see some of the student work as we go through this. Okay. So this is what I said just talking about. SEALS stands for Specialist EAL Support. We do not call it EAL because we have a huge demographic of EAL learners. We're trying to get away from the stigma of the label of EAL, and so it's, we are all EAL learners, and there are some students that need a little bit extra support in their language learning. So we call that SEALs. So this is what our EAL team provision looks like in our virtual school learning. So we have co-planning. So our EAL teachers are assigned to year groups and they co-plan with the homeroom. They are involved actively in scaffolding for those lessons. They create scaffolds which go home in our learning packs, which are available to parents to support. This is an example of this. This is actually a slide from a video. You can see what it's trying to do here. It's trying to pick up parts of sentences. This is actually from an app which Kate shared in her previous webinar called Widget, and it visualizes sentences. It's a very powerful tool, and if you're not aware of that, please let me know in the chat if you would like me to direct you to that later. So we prepare extra practice opportunities, look at the language steps and try and teach those language points, the applied ones that, you know, maybe some students may have, but the EAL learners perhaps need a bit more before the main taught content. And yeah, blend of video teaching and live teaching at the moment. We also ensure that our English language is all linked up to homeroom work. So the core text really guides what we're doing in terms of cross-curricular, in terms of English, and even tying into maths sometimes. And our SEALS provision is a support network for that. So yeah, and obviously we do a lot of translanguaging as well to ensure that children are able to use their mother tongue, which we also view as incredibly important. So that's the EAL team provision, and this is really crucial. This is really crucial, and it's so important to have a voice of language in your year groups, especially in this situation, because it is so easy to say, right, we're going to do this text, and we're going this way. And the language acquisition specialist is able to come in at that point and say, well, hang on, have we considered this? Have we considered these things for our students? Is this going to be completely accessible, considering that they are isolated at home with parents that do not speak English? It is a very, very valuable process to go through. Okay, so moving on from EAL team provision, we're going to start talking about a really important aspect of this virtual schooling, which I have found to be feedback, and I've written it 3 times up there. Feedback, feedback, feedback. Feedback is utterly essential. Obviously, we know that, but at this time, when children are at home, communication is so important, and it really, really is a scaffold for your EAL learners to know that your teachers are constantly in contact with you, or you know that there's a time in the day where your teacher will sit down and look at that work and send you a personal message back, is an incredibly powerful thing. And we have seen direct links between the amount of feedback in a timely manner and the uptake of students to tasks. So with that in mind, it's so important to go through. And what we have done, we've designed feedback in a certain way, and we've kind of said to make it manageable for teachers, and also to set expectations for parents. We've kind of said that feedback will focus on that. We will look at the positives and then maybe provide a next step, a stretch task, or can you go back and look at this? So this is an example here of what I've asked them to do. So this child submitted a piece of work, but they weren't too sure on numerator and denominator. So I asked them to go away and do that, to say, can you go away and tell me about this? And this is a piece of extra work that student did for me. Now, this is very powerful because it allows you to support your perhaps lower ability, lower proficiency students with anything that they may need support on, or it may be able to be a powerful tool to add stretch for students that need that extra challenge, or are slightly more proficient in language. So yeah, to summarize just here is set your work hours and make sure you communicate them with your parents. They need to know, otherwise they'll be expecting you to feedback in the wee hours of the morning. So it's really important that you set those standards with your parents and let them know when you're going to feed back, how long to expect. We set a 16-hour window for feedback, so we have to make sure that it's back within 16 hours. Earlier, obviously better. So give it as fast as you can within your working day, set a time, strengths and next steps, and praise and rewards. You know, when they really do set, when they send you extra things that you to do, you know, identify that. So I've kind of given you a few student examples here. So this one is, I've asked her to go away and spot the problem's intent. And this student went away and did that and resubmitted again with the corrections necessary. And this is an example of a piece of work that's gone back and I've praised for it. So this is a brilliant piece of writing. You've listened to the video. I told her what she's done, but this is the result of feedback. So I've given her clear targets to go away and think about, and this student has gone and done that. So feedback is a really, really key important one to get right, and it's got to be timely. I think that's the key. It's got to be timely, and for our EAL learners, it's got to be language focused. So look at your language structures. What do you want them to learn? And if they're not getting that right, you need to let them know and then expect them to re-upload, but you've got to acknowledge that as well. So now we're going to go on to something else which we've also found is really, really important, and that is, it sounds a bit silly, but less is more. And I'm sure you've heard that before in your schools or wherever you work, that less is more. But it's super important right now, especially for our EAL learners, because we need to remember that we are not face-to-face. We need to remember that they are possibly quite vulnerable at home and not knowing how to access their work. They don't have a teacher in the room to say, how do I do this? So we need to really consider carefully what are the learning points and how are they delivered. And this is obviously very important face-to-face and offline, but it has to be at the forefront of what you're thinking about to really consider that. So I'm just going to share building this sentence. So this is an example of what I've titled as less is more. So comparative adjectives are a year 2 British curriculum grammar objective from, we use the Focus Ed document, but it's a British national curriculum target. So this hasn't been taught in year 2 before, but it needs to be done in such a super simple way in order for access to happen. So, you know, hello year 2 and welcome back to our English video teaching. This is so we're not going to watch it all. We're going to be looking back at our story. What's the name of our story? The Lighthouse Keepers. I need an apostrophe there. Keepers lunch. Yes. So I'm going slowly on this, deliberately, as slowly as I can, with a certain outcome in mind. So I've also here, you can see this is a scaffold that I provided. It said, if you study seals with our wonderful Miss Sarah, then I want you to use these words. Okay, these are the target words. And these would have been decided with the EAL teacher. What do we want them to use in sentences? Frightened was chosen for a reason, for its syllables, for example. So there is some thinking behind this, and it is super, super simple, but it keeps on the same point. You know, we use comparative adjectives. Say that together with me. Comparative adjectives. Say it. Comparative adjectives. To compare two things. So it is very, very simple. So I'm going to show you how to do this. But it gets you results. In this picture, we've got two nouns here. I've got the moon or the moonlight, and I've got the lighthouse, and the lighthouse's light beaming out over the ocean. I want to compare the moonlight and the lighthouse light. These lights this light is very, very, what's the adjective? Very, very bright. Yes? And the moonlight tonight is not very bright, is it? It's not bright, so it's not bright. So I want to put this information into one sentence, okay? So, then I go on to writing two sentences, and then we put it together, and then we highlight what's happened to that, what the grammar is, and then we give them some rules. We go through the rules together. It's all done together. It looks super simple, but it's actually so much more impactful, we found, in this situation, to actually have a blank slate and go through it with them, rather than showing them wallpaper with the rules, which you've pulled off Twinkle or you've pulled off the internet or whatever, but actually going through the rules in this approach live with them on a video teach actually really, really helps students in this situation. So you will see in my resources that I do not use, comparative adjective rules on how to do that from the internet, because the children will look at that image and possibly not process it. This is not all the rules either. I'm giving them a set of part of it, and we will build on that later. So less really is more. And if you take this approach with your EAL learners in this virtual school environment, you will see some really good results. Okay, so we're moving on to a big one now, and I'm going to come back to this in the end. So I hope we can have a good discussion a bit about speaking opportunities. So I'm just going to go through these really quick. So spoken versus written, huge one. We started off with a lot of worksheets. Is there a need for so much written work? Probably not, especially in this situation. We are dealing with children that are at home, not in an English environment. They are relying on teachers to provide speaking opportunities for them. It might be the only speaking opportunity that they get in the whole week. So we must consider spoken versus written. Yes, it's probably very easy to get a worksheet and say, right, complete the sentences. But is that the best approach? And I would argue, even for year 6, there is a massive need to plan in spoken opportunities. They're not in their immersion environments. Okay, in my context, it's a Chinese context, and China, especially for families, is very much in lockdown. Families are at home, children are doing their schooling from home, which essentially means families do not go out during the week. They're relying on us. Okay, drama, pretend play, physical activities are all a great way to encourage participation with English acquisition, and a great way to avoid worksheet mania. So if you take away one thing from this moving forward, I would say that it is to ensure that you have a huge amount of speaking opportunities for your children in your content, because they rely on us for it so much. Now, here's an example of a couple of year 2 activities, or that I've used recently, and these are super simple activities that you can do with any year group. This one's drawing for talk, where you set your language structures. You go through it in a video with them. You do it with them, and you draw a scene or whatever. This one was for the lighthouse keeper's lunch, and we did a what's in your picnic basket. So I did that with them. This was part of a video. So we drew what's in Mr. Sam's picnic basket, using the target language structures to talk through it. And then at the end, I showed them the finished piece of work, and I modeled what talk I was expecting of them. And I did it for my picnic basket, and then they had to go and do it. And all students were able to go and do that. one thing my wife said when watching these videos, because I have a year 2 child as well, she said that as an outside observer, she didn't need too much English, although she speaks perfect English, and it was an observation, that she didn't need too much English to actually understand what the task was. And it was easy to pick up on the language structures because they were repeated and repeated through the drawing, through the presentation, through the slides. So there was a strong language focus through it, which had obviously been planned. And then we got some fantastic videos back of children speaking, and that was the day of okay, I've lost my train of thought. It is live. So that's one. Another one is Diamond 9. I'm sure some of you have played it. So this was to say what was your favorite thing in your picnic basket. This was another task to go alongside this. And which ones don't you like? Obviously, as a teacher, cake and Coke are at the bottom, and healthy, wonderful things are at the top. So yeah, this also is a task. It's a speaking task where they have to explain their favorites versus the ones that they don't like, and justify the order. And again, you do it through model talk. You model the task with them, and then you ask them to give you videos. So another thing we've done a lot of is drama for speaking, and as children are all at home, you'll get a lot of children. You'll get a lot of children in their pajamas, which is a bit odd, but that's what we've got to work with. So this was the lighthouse keeper's lunch, where Hamish the cat, if you're familiar with the story, is in the basket, and this is the cottage, and this boy up here is the seagull, and they had to act out a certain scene, again, based on the language structures that had been planned for. And these kind of opportunities are so much more engaging and bring life to this home environment, if you will. And I really believe that we should be bringing more of this to the home, especially for our language learners who are relying on us to bring the fun and bring the language to them. So this is another one, teaching instructions through model talk and drama. So we were doing instructions as part of Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch, and it was how to make a sandwich, how to brush your teeth, and I started with how to turn year 2 children into frogs. So I read through this. I went, the focus was on time adverbials, imperative verbs, and then I said, we're going to make a potion to turn these 2 children into frogs. So that's what we did. And again, it was a drama task, model talk. They had to then go away and make their own set of instructions, and they had to speak through them and upload a video. So just another way of getting talk and drama into the lives of the children that we are responsible for, to ensure that we are offering guided speaking practice. Is just very important. This is a quick example of a video that we got.
Hello, Tracy. Today I'm going to teach you how to brush your teeth. This is my toothpaste. This is my toothbrush. And first, put your toothbrush there and open the toothpaste. Then.
So that's the kind of thing. I'm not going to show you all the video because time is getting on, but it brings a bit of life to the home environment. It gets children speaking in English.
Hello, Tracy.
So to kind of review on this, and this is another video as we go through of Talk for Right, which you might have heard of. So speaking opportunities are vital to help maintain student additional language. The opportunities you provide are likely to be their only conversations in English. They're fun, they're really fun, and the kids love doing it. It's a unique situation. And actually we found that the children that maybe are quite shy in larger groups, which we may consider students in the silent period of language acquisition, they actually show a different side of themselves sometimes, and give us talking into a camera doesn't seem to faze some students as it does being in a group in class situations. So you might find some of those wallflowers coming out and blossoming and giving you some wonderful, wonderful work. So, and obviously we all know that speaking leads into written work. It's the precursor. This is talk for write, as you can see. We have to make sure that we are providing these opportunities, even up to and beyond year 6. It is crucial. So on from that, I'm going to share a little bit about explicit instruction and scaffolding. So the first thing to say about this, I know it is a hot topic at the moment, explicit instruction. But in the China context, with the culture and the education in China, it all links up very well with direct instruction and explicit instruction. And I would argue, and again, I'm not the all-seeing, all-hearing voice on this, but I would argue that in my context, at least in this China context, this is a great way to support independence and in a home learning context. It clearly outlines what students have to do, because they don't have a teacher at home to do that. I keep coming back to that point, but it's so true. It clearly outlines what your students have to do. It encourages thorough written responses. Okay, I'm not going to show all of these. You can kind of think of it as wallpaper if you want, and we'll just go through a few little bits of it. So this is, we were doing where the wild things are. So this is the part where we've come back from our writing and we want to write a bit more. So this is how we approach this. So we wanted to add more detail, and it really is kind of quite direct. So we'll have a look from here. Let's see. Max was sad and went home. He was happy. Now, that might be okay if you were in year 1, but you are not in year 1. You are not in year 1, you are in year 2. We want you to add more detail. And more detail means talking about each picture, okay? And responding, like I said, making sure you write a sentence for the things that are happening. So what are the wild things doing? Write a sentence about this. About this. Yes? Okay. What is Max doing? Not just how he's feeling. Write a sentence about this. Can you describe the setting and where the wild things and Max are? Write a sentence about this. It's very draconic, but it's really got some results. And if you know me as a teacher, the way I am saying write a sentence about this, the children found it rather amusing, but they went away and did it. So I'll just zoom through this, pun intended, this video just quickly so you can see the process we went through. So we went through this, and kind of really highlighted the fact that this is what we want you to write about. Now, I'm quite a believer in direct instruction and explicit teaching. I think that in my personal opinion, especially in this context that I work in, that it is essential for children to learn how to write rather than just completely explore by themselves. I believe that children do need to be told how to write sentences, do need to be directed as to what they need to include, and that in itself leads to creativity in writing, leads to creativity in the language that they are using. It gives them a foundation. Now, this kind of approach, I then screenshot this and send it home. You know, so they've got this. They know sentence by sentence what they've got to do for this task. And this is crucial at this time where we are not at home, we are not at school with the children, and they don't have parents that understand what we're doing. They're not teachers. We cannot rely on parents. So yeah, this is another example, you know, going through a text. going through a text. This is a diary writing we were doing as part of our Where the Wild Things Are, making it very explicit that this is what you have to do. It must include an address. It must include these certain things. You have to go and do this. Highlighting it, providing scaffolds like this, color-coded scaffolds, to get them understanding what they have to do. It's been a very powerful tool to getting some writing. And this is an example of a graphic organizer that we used for certain aspects of the story that went along with the direct instruction in total. And here's some results. Both of these, by the way, both of these examples are from EAL children on the SEALS program. And you can see that they've really tried. We studied expanded noun phrases. We studied past tense, all these things. You can kind of see them coming through. We studied openers, different openers. And because we've said, use this, do this, it's coming through in their writing, because that becomes their teacher. That video and that scaffold becomes their teacher at home. This is another form of scaffolding. If you are familiar with the TESMC course from Australia, you'll probably know a bit about this. But this is an example of a scaffold that we've used to get students into writing higher quality sentences and going a bit deeper. So we start with the thing that we're talking about. We look at the which one. We look at the what's it like. And then we look at articles and openers. It can be changed depending on year group. This is just what it was used for expanded noun phrases. So it reminds children that they have to talk about what an object is like. You know, there has to be possibly an article or omission of. It's better to have an opener of some sort. And you need to give detail on which one in particular. So in front of Max, a deep, dark forest stood tall. So we use this in quite a few lessons, and I use this a lot in my teaching to build up examples of this. This was an activity I asked them to go and do as a warm-up. So we looked at a car, and then it was we also included what kind. What kind are things that cannot be argued. So it's convertible. It is convertible. It cannot be argued. Sports. It is a sports car that cannot be argued. Awesome is what I think. Beautiful is what I think. Red is what I think. Adjectives can be interchangeable depending on the opinion of the writer. And then obviously, there we go. So that's how we build a sentence for our expanded noun phrases for this nominalization, nominal groups. So we start with it's a car, it's a beautiful red car, awesome beautiful red car, all the way up to awesome beautiful red convertible sports car that belongs to Mr. David. So they had to go away with a set of images and this scaffold and go away and either write or speak. They were not asked to just write. They could do this in spoken. So most of our activities as a scaffold for EAL learners are either write or speak or both, to give that option to the students that maybe are not very strong at writing or maybe want to practice speaking more. Is an example of it for our topic. And you can see that it's being used. This is a piece of work, again, from an EAL learner. This is a boy called Ethan, who not very long ago couldn't speak anything. So he is using these things because we have directed him and explicitly taught that he needs to use these things. And once he has these abilities to do this and he understands how to do this, he can then go and build flair and explore language in more depth. We are giving him the tools to be creative in an explicit, direct way. So a big part of this is shared rights and model text creation. And we all know that model texts are a superb scaffold for EAL learners. I say that's true, but just providing a model text to a student at home is like giving a piece of wallpaper to them, unless you build it together with the child. Giving them a model text has some impact for some students. Writing a model text with the students is actually very different. And then actually, it's a very, very different approach. And it's absolutely brilliant for EAL learners, and will really help for your students to create some truly outstanding pieces of work. So I'm going to give you an example here. Again, we're not going to watch the whole thing due to time, but we'll just go through a few parts of this. So this is informal letter. You know, we've gone through the features already. And then I think I shared this one earlier, but we write this together explicitly. We write it together and we go through it live on the screen so they can kind of see how it's written. And I am all along the way explaining this with them, reading it with them. And you can see some of my humor coming through here. I have to just stay home every day cooking and cleaning and cooking and cleaning. It's making me really upset. Yeah, so so we found that this is a very powerful way of ensuring the students, especially our language learners, our English language learners, are able to give you some really outstanding results. And we all know that the only thing holding our students back is language. It's nothing else. And language is something that can be learned, and it will not be a barrier forever. And these are ways that I'm trying to share with you that will stop those barriers from becoming huge problems for the children at home. If they've got a teacher that is able to, you know, write that text with them, I hope you can see the power in writing this with them in a video at home, rather than just putting this on screen as a wallpaper and saying, do it like this. Because there is true value to going through it in this way and highlighting certain bits of text. And it really involves them in what you want to do. And I'm going to talk about enthusiasm and humor. And, you know, I know that this has made some of my students laugh. They've told me so. So that's really involved them too. So moving on. Okay. So we're gonna, I don't think Catherine's here actually today, unfortunately not. I was hoping Catherine could talk a bit about this, but as we're running out of time anyway, I'll go for it quickly. So this is planning for language and access and maths, and it's really important to note that the whole primary school genuinely has an absolute embedded language acquisition focus. No matter who the teacher is, it's not just the EAL specialists. The entire school, the entire primary school has that genuine care towards language, and that it threads through everything we do. And you can see this coming through in the maths, and it's very simple. Resources, you can see it's genuinely not. It's not going to take you a long time to make these. But again, my wife said, I can watch this and I understand what the learning objective is. I understand what the learning is. I can understand absolutely everything in these videos without speaking English. So with that in mind, the way that we're doing this, as you can see, you know, it's very simple, but it allows even our zero English children to truly access the curriculum that we are teaching through. So as you can, I just wanted to share this with you in maths as well.
So just have a go with each of these images.
So you can see that even in maths, we have teachers that are devoted to ensuring.
Let me take you to a different example.
Devoted to ensuring that language acquisition is a focus. Now, the video for this, it was a speaking task, again, a spoken task, where the children had to go around their house using certain language to find arrays in their house. Array of toilet rolls was one I saw. But it gave another chance for speaking to thread through, even through our maths. Again, just a very quick example.
Hello, everyone. Today in...
So again, we do the activities with the children. It's highly visual. We do not rely on the language or we do not rely on the text on a flip chart. We we rely very much on manipulatives and visuals and graded speak. So I hope you can see through these very quick examples what we're trying to do to gain access for our English language learners. Okay, so there's me being silly. So enthusiasm and humor as a scaffold. Now, for me, this is massively important. And children are bored stiff at home at the moment. They really are. Like, I have 2 children of my own, and they are really quite bored. They are gnawing their own legs off with boredom. They need us as teachers to bring this boring existence alive. Okay? They, you know, they might not have that much light in their lives right now. We don't know their personal situations. We need to be that enthusiastic person in their life that they can look to enjoy their day. And that is, I'm including this as a scaffold for English language learners, because I genuinely believe that it's important and directly linked to language acquisition. Language acquisition can't happen unless you have a very, very, very stable, supportive, caring environment with adults that are genuinely interested in their learning. So I've put be silly, even with year 6, they need it, you know? So there's some points up here you can have a look through. And this is just a couple of screenshots of me being silly. So this is me mixing up the potion to turn year 2s into frogs. And again, me sharing this cooking and cleaning thing, which actually I read crying. So I was actually crying whilst writing this with them. So yeah, try and bring the humor to the situation. Try and bring that love and passion that you have in your classroom to those videos, to those sessions, because it is so important now more than ever. Think CBBC, think children's TV presenter, try and enjoy it with them. So I've got some other important points to go through, and those are just before we come to the end of the discussion part of this, just rewards and incentives are also so important. The children still love accessing the incentive schemes, whichever you use at your school. We have house points. The kids respond really well to house points, and I've made them create like tally charts of the house points they're getting, so they're still valid. It's just really good to keep the rewards going, and it's feedback rewards. If they've tried their hardest on a piece of work, or they've resubmitted a piece of work, just give them that time to give them that little boost and say, really well done, and I really like this, and try to identify parts in their work that you really think they've tried hard at, and state that with them. So I've also put as an end kind of thought, coming to the end of this webinar now, is that parent communication and relationships we know are very important, but again, at this point in time, it is so important to have clear communication with your parent body as a teacher for your class. It is absolutely necessary to be on the end of that email chain, and have a time in your day where you are reaching out to parents, where you are building those relationships to ensure that the child at home has a clear link, and it really will boost the uptake and well-being of your students. So we've gone through quite a lot today of different things that I've found. And again, I speak from my perspective as an EAL coordinator and a year 2 teacher, that I have found to be highly important to make virtual schooling a success for our EAL learners. But I also just want to end with maybe some pitfalls and some things that I wished I knew earlier. And it's that, technology is wonderful sometimes, but not always wonderful. You've got to give ample time to record these videos make sure your technology is working. We're using Class Dojo. Videos can only be up to 8 minutes. So I've recorded 15-minute videos and then they've just been cut off and the children have not been able to access them, things like that. Lack of feedback directly impacts uptake. And that includes, and I include, just well done, student X. That kind of feedback is wallpaper. That kind of feedback will not be acted on. It may not even be shared by the parent if it is a younger child with the student. But if it provides a next step or a point that points to the part that you really liked, or it gives like a support task or a stretch task, then that's completely different, and it really transforms your virtual classroom. And communication, I've hammered that home so much. Handbrake.fr. If you do not know about this, it is a wonderful website. And for example, it compressed a video, a 1 gigabyte video, which I made for a certain project for our year 2 group, to 30 megabytes. So and none of the quality was lost. So Handbrake FR for changing videos to massive files, to absolutely tiny files with the same quality. I genuinely recommend you visiting this. It will help you compressing. It's really fast. It's free, and it can be downloaded for Mac or PC. So that's a really good one. iMovie is an amazingly fast, easy, awesome editing solution if you're an iPhone user. I found that out late. It's not all singing, all dancing, but it's enough to make the content better. And it's super easy to use and really quick, especially once you've used Handbrake to make those videos smaller. It makes it even faster. And again, just really hammer that home that EAL students must have opportunities for speaking, lots of. Okay, so that's really a whirlwind end to the webinar. So I'd like to invite anyone to share, and I can see the chat coming through, so I'll look through the chat. And then if anyone wants to share now, I really want some questions, but be aware, you know, I am a teacher, I'm an EAL coordinator. I might not have the answers to everything, you know, and anything you want to share, please, because we are all here for the same reason, including myself. I'm here to learn from you guys. So if you want to put your hand up now, I would really love to invite you all to have some questions. So thanks for listening to this, and yeah, let's have a look at some of the questions. Will you be sharing the presentation later? Yes, I will. Let's have a look. Widget, yeah, that's been shared. How are you recording the shared work? Recording on the device or videoing it externally? Feel I don't have the tech and know the confidence about this. Recording shared work. Lorna, can I invite you to expand on that?
Oh, there we go, unmute. Hello, good morning or good afternoon for you. Yeah, it's just, you look amazing. It's wonderful watching the videos, watching the opportunities to speak out loud and model what you're doing. I'm just curious how you're actually recording it. Does the device you're working on record it as you're going, or are you externally videoing what you're doing? Does that make sense?
Sure. Okay. So I can take you through that. So what I use are two tools really. So maybe I can just I use QuickTime. And if you go to QuickTime, there it is, QuickTime. It gives you the option up here to record screen. So I can go File, New Screen Recording. Okay. So that allows me to speak over my screen here. And also, if I want my video, the video of my horrific face in the top corner, so I can open that and put there in the top, and then I go to View, Float on Top, which means this will always be on top now. It will always be on top, even if I open a flip chart or a PowerPoint presentation, and then they will always have my picture in the corner for the students to see. And then I go to screen recording. And then it's just a case of I use Active Inspire and sometimes PowerPoint, but for learning, I much more prefer to use Active Inspire. And then I just literally use that as my whiteboard to work with children. So it's literally those two tools. That's it. So I'll quit that now and then go back to our question screen. So yeah.
Thank you for that. That's fantastic. I work as an advisory teacher for a council, and we're trying to look at creative ways that we can support the schools.
Yeah.
We've put a Google form out to all the schools in the borough to ask them what they want from us, and the answers are starting to arrive thick and fast. So just a little bit nervous. It was amazing and wonderful, and it shows me what is out there and what we can do, but it's a case of building my confidence to sort of match what the children need. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Lorna. Yeah, and you're right. It's all about what the children need. And in this situation, language learner or not, it is very different to what their needs are in school. Yeah, so that's one thing. Thank you very much, Lorna. Just looking through for anyone else. Flipgrid as a fun and grading speaking tool. Oh, Luke, are you still with us? Do you want to share on that? Maybe not.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Luke. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, so Flipgrid is a free tool you can use. It creates like a platform where children can count, and you can set a task, and they will respond to that task with, speaking. It's usually a video that they reply with, and they can view each other's videos and also leave their own kind of responses to those videos.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's been really, really fun. The kids love it. They can, they can get creative with it too. So it's, yeah, it's been great.
Wow. Okay, I'm actually writing this down because I'm hoping to get some ideas from you guys as well. Because the pursuit of being a teacher, you can never be good enough, and you can never know enough. So thanks. I'm definitely going to include that. I'm going to go and explore that now. Thank you very much. Okay, let's have a look. What are your students using to upload and return their speaking videos back to you? Have you had any technical hurdles? Do you ask them to use the same way to streamline their submission? Okay, so we use Class Dojo, and I can't share my screen for that because obviously it involves sharing. That would involve sharing the children in my class, and I can't share that for obvious safeguarding reasons. But classdojo.com is a wonderful platform. It's quite slow in China. It does work without a VPN, but it's quite slow. Not for the children though, and it's very children friendly. You can have it on an iPad. And my children, even from year one, my year one girl, she uses the iPad by herself. She presses click on her name, and then it goes in and it says plus, and it's got a plus sign, and you press it, and then you can choose to upload text, video, or photo. So even a year one is able to select that and make a video on the iPad by themselves. So that's been a really, really useful tool, and it converts videos to be a very small format. So it doesn't take too long to upload, but sometimes, not all the time, sometimes the internet does play up if you're in China. The Class Dojo is really good, and I'll just put that into the chat now, the website for that. Was there anyone else that would like to contribute at this point? Nope. Okay. Well, we've been over an hour now. I think it's about right though, considering the start. So I'm just going to leave you with our feedback QR code, and we love to get feedback, and I would love to hear what you thought about this webinar. And yeah, my last leaving statement would be, please, if anyone wants to move forward with a live teaching webinar, I think that's the next step. We've been through the pedagogy with Kate. We've been through best practice here now. I think maybe live teaching is maybe the next step. So any volunteers out there, yeah, I genuinely believe that would be a great one for attendance, and I would really enjoy coming to that. So thank you very much. I hope this sharing was useful to you all, and it's been an absolute pleasure to do this with you today. Okay, so thank you very much, and see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.